WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
It is a Hump Day Wednesday edition of Game Night on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live in the Matt Black Kia Studios as we have Sixers and Nets tonight coming up at 7 p.m. right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Tom McGinnis on the call tonight. We got a lot to get to. Dave Weinberg will join us at 6:15 for a Weinberg Wednesday. We'll get into the Eagles, a little NFL draft, and more with Dave coming up there. Also, Kevin McCormick is going to join us to get more into the Sixers as they are back in action tonight. Plus, you guys can chime in as well. 609-403-0973 is the text board. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can watch the show on 97.3 ESPN on social media platforms. And as you've probably heard by now, the news is out. As we talked about a little bit yesterday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, here's the situation. Pretty much almost nobody's playing tonight for the Nets. Durant is out for injury management. Griffin is out for injury management. Aldridge is out for a non-COVID-related illness. Harden is out with a right hamstring strain. Okay? It's ridiculous. Kyrie Irving is expected to play tonight. So take that for whatever it's worth. And I understand people come from, maybe the Nets are just trying to be healthy for the playoffs and all that kind of stuff. But let me tell you something. I don't like it. And I'm going to be consistent. I'm not going to back off or capitulate or give in just because I don't fall in line with somebody's specific opinions or views on the world. I remember back a few years ago, LeBron's last year in Cleveland, and they were basically coasting through the regular season. And I said back then, people kept telling me, oh, they're going to turn it on. It's like a light switch. They're just going to flip it on for the playoffs. And then you saw what happened in the NBA Finals, how that team just fell apart. And as soon as they lost that game one, they never had a chance to bounce back at all. Zilch. Nada. I'm telling you guys right now, right here. I look at this team, the Nets, and I got no respect for them. I don't. Not at all. I don't believe in turning on a switch. I think it's one of the stupidest things in sports. You either are playing the game or you're not playing the game. You're either in it or you're not in it. It is absolutely ridiculous, this idea of the world, that people can just, I'm just trying to get by. What are you talking about? Well, I'm trying to get ready for the postseason. Really? Well, we got to be healthy. Well, you were healthy last night. Steve Nash was asked about why they played Kevin Garnett last night and why he's not playing tonight. You know what he said? He said that, we thought about having Durant play versus the Sixers and not versus Minnesota, but he wanted to give the group a chance to move past the loss to the Lakers, and that Durant's ramp-up plan dictates he not have two high-intensity workouts within 48 hours. Okay, first of all, you want to give the guys a chance to get over a game in a game where Minnesota didn't have Karl-Anthony Towns. Sounds like a convenient excuse. But if you know that Durant can't ramp up and can't do certain things, what you basically said is you don't value the number one seed. You don't respect the rest of the Eastern Conference. That you're already admitting you're not going to get a lot of games with the team together, and that you're just going to have to figure it out. Nash says, we're not going to make excuses, but you're kind of already making excuses. I think the Sixers are in a better position to win the Eastern Conference right now than the Nets, because they are actually going out there and playing games. And when they do miss games, it's either because of COVID or because of injury, not injury management, not personal reasons. It's actually shocking that you have a guy in Kyrie Irving who's played the most games between him and Durant, and he's missed so many games for personal reasons. The whole thing is just ridiculous to me. And that's why when Kevin Pelton, ESPN NBA insider, said this with Mike Gill earlier today on the Sports Bash, I couldn't help but agree and nod my head.
I would go with the field at this point. I think the Nets are the favorites for sure, but especially when you consider that, for the reasons we've talked about, Philly is the favorite now to get the number one seed and the advantages that's going to convey this year. I definitely don't think I could go over 50% for the Nets at this point.
Can't go over 50% for the Nets, and I agree 100%. A lot of percentages going on there, but seriously, I look at the Nets and I see a team that has had no time to gel, no time to come together, no time to work on their craft. To me, that's a problem. If you cannot get your situation tightened up, tuned up, and ready to go, I don't care how talented you are. Even Michael Jordan tried to come back. Remember that? When he wore 45 and they couldn't even get to the NBA Finals. You know why? Because they didn't have enough ramp-up time. They didn't. Listen, if the Nets want to chalk up this year to it's not our year, I'm fine with that. But you got to admit it. You got to be upfront about it. You can't just be beating around the bush, hemming and hawing about it. No. If you are going out there saying there's no excuses, then you're building an excuse. It's pathetic. Now, on the other side of the coin, what's equally pathetic is if Joel Embiid doesn't go out there and dominate tonight versus Claxton and company, then that's bad too. Kyrie's going to get his. He's going to score 18 to 28 points every night he plays basketball. It's just his skill set. He's a scorer. He's really good at it. I have no worries about Kyrie going out there and getting his points. But the Sixers need to go out there and finish the job. They need to go out there and get the job done. Because as Paul Hudrick said earlier in the Sports Bash, this game tonight still matters.
There's still something at stake here too. The season series. If the Sixers win tonight, they get the season series over Brooklyn. And if it winds up being a tie after 72 games, the Sixers would get the number one seed. So this game does matter. It's not like it doesn't matter. So, I mean, let's just say that both teams decide for the rest of the season, we're going to coast into the postseason. This game still matters for that number one seed.
And when you get that number one seed, if you look at the Eastern Conference standings, after the first round, the number one seed is probably going to end up playing the Hawks or the Celtics. You've already proven this year you could beat the Celtics. The Hawks, they are also a beatable team. And in the second round, you get to avoid the Bucks or the Nets. I think it's a big deal. I think it's way more of a big deal than people realize. I think that if you can avoid certain matchups, you're golden. And to me, if I can avoid the Nets, the Bucks, and the Heat in the first two rounds of the playoffs, and I understand the Heat are not one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, but I think that matchup-wise, they present some very interesting issues for the Sixers. I'm not going to undersell the Jimmy Butler factor. He can win a game or two by himself. I think that if you can get to the Eastern Conference and then have to face the Nets or the Bucks, I think it's a big deal. And I think that the whole situation is being undersold. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, we'll get to your thoughts and comments a little bit later in the show, 609-403-0973, and we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can watch the show here on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig live in the Matt Black Kia studios. Matt Black Kia, they want to get you approved today. That's Matt Black Kia on the Black Horse Pike at Egg Harbor Township. It is Wednesday. That means Dave Weinberg joins us next. Talk about the Eagles, the NFL draft, and more here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle City.
It's Philadelphia Flyers hockey tomorrow on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app with Tim Saunders and Steve Coates calling all the play-by-play action.
Oh, big save by Carter Hart.
The Flyers are in Pittsburgh to face the Penguins tomorrow. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. It's Philadelphia Flyers hockey on the radio home of the Flyers in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN, and listen live on the free mobile app.
Town Square Media has teamed up with Rossi Honda on South Delsey Drive in Vineland to bring you the Teen Safe Driving Program. As parents, we need to instruct our teens how to handle emergencies, remind them not to text while driving, and never drink and drive. Bring your teen's car into Rossi Honda for a free safety check, no matter what the type or where you bought it. Or have them come in for a free safety class, where they'll learn how to change a flat tire, what to do about a dead battery, or what to do when they run out of gas. Call Rossi Honda for an appointment.
down payment, 0% financing, and $2,500 off MSRP on every 2021 Nissan Murano in stock.
Oh, yeah, it's on at Matt Blatt Nissan.
The word is out. The all-new Matt Blatt Nissan and the all-new 2021 Nissan Rogue. Lease a loaded SV model, just $269 per month with 0 security deposit. Plus, Matt Blatt Nissan needs your trade. Even if you owe more than it's worth, pay 0 down, pay 0% financing, and take $2,500 off MSRP on every new Nissan Murano in stock. Plus our fast-track checkout. So bring any trade to Matt Blatt Nissan in Egg Harbor Township next to Home Depot or online at mattblattnissan.com.
Negative equity will be refinanced into new vehicle. Rate qualifications exist. Not all will qualify. 0% APR financing based on 1667 per thousand borrowed. Offers can't be combined. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblattnissan.com for complete details. Offer ends 5/4/21.
It's on at Matt Blatt Nissan on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We got a lot to get to, only an hour to get to it all. And every Wednesday we are joined on the Boardwalk Hunter Hotline by Dave Weinberg at Dave Weinberg 19 on Twitter. As it feels like no matter what happens, we can't get away from Eagles news. And Dave is kind enough to oblige us with his time here on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Josh. How are you?
Doing pretty good. So apparently the latest thing this week with the Eagles is there's apparently trouble in paradise, supposedly, depending on who you ask. What do you read into this whole fiasco about? There's a so for those who haven't read the story, apparently there's this big war in the Eagles front office between the analytics guys and the football guys, and that Jeffrey Lurie kind of operates as like the arbiter of like both sides of it. The whole story just screams more of this strangeness that goes on in the Eagles organization.
Yeah, it's very odd, Josh. I know that Jeffrey Lurie, I've always known Jeffrey Lurie to be pretty heavily involved with things, but I just didn't realize it was to that degree. The fact that he has his thumb on the entire franchise, the fact that Doug Peterson had to undergo weekly meetings every Tuesday, even after winning the Super Bowl. They were questioning him, why didn't you throw the ball more after you beat Green Bay on the road? Then the following week, the same thing. It's just, it just seems like they were overly critical about things. And I understand analytics play a part in sports nowadays, but I think that Doug Peterson had earned that cachet, if you will, by winning the Super Bowl. He didn't need to be questioned every week about, whether even win or lose.
Well, not just they earn the cachet, but he's winning football games. Like the whole story about the Packers when Jeffrey Lurie was unhappy after the win because they ran the ball too much. They said like this idea that like the ultimate goal should be winning and losing. Not Absolutely. How you won or lost the game. There's no such thing as a pretty loss. It's either you win or you lose the game. And it feels like that the organization is, suffering paralysis by overanalysis here.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I mean, like you said, winning is the ultimate goal, and they were winning. So why are you questioning it? Why are you worried about it? I don't understand. And I'm just surprised that Jeffrey is so meddlesome. I mean, I knew he was involved, like I said, but I didn't expect it to be this degree where he's like questioning everything. He's, he hired an analytics guy. He put them in another side of the building. Except for the coaching staff and the analytics guys are arguing back and forth. It just seems like a really dysfunctional franchise. And, I was surprised that even one person in this story said, how we won the Super Bowl was as a total shock given all that's happened in the last few years. The whole thing is just a big circus right now, it seems like.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And Dave, like you've seen the Eagles organization from the beginning of the Jeffrey Lurie era to now, and it seems like that. And I don't know how true this is. Some people are suggesting that he's become more involved since the firing of Andy Reid, and that the Super Bowl emboldened him to be more involved. And you know what? That kind of, I'm not saying it's the same, but it sounds a little familiar because that's what happened with Jerry Jones down in Dallas. Once he started winning championships, he was like, I know what I'm doing. And I don't understand what is up with these guys. It's like they they have success and then it goes to their head. It's like, no, if the wheel works, why are you trying to reinvent it?
Right. I mean, you can look around the league at the different owners. I mean, Robert Kraft has certainly had his problems off the field, but he's not going to question Bill Belichick about things. And you can look at Arthur Blank in Atlanta, same thing. He's not. There's just I understand how important it is, and it's kind of like a toy to play with when you're an owner of an NFL team. I understand that you put out a lot of money, but the best thing you can do is just step aside and let the football people make the football decisions. I know you can play fantasy football, you can judge the drafts however you want. You can listen to Mel Kiper and the various analysts, but there comes a time you've hired these guys to run your football team, so just sit back and let them run it.
Dave Weinberg joining us for a Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN at Dave Weinberg 19 on Twitter. Check us Extra Point columns over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Dave, one more thing on the Eagles front. And,
sure.
There's a part of me that really wonders, when I look at the organization, I listen, anybody who has half a brain knows if you are either an Eagles fan or you cover the team, you want the team to be successful. No one roots for them to not have success. But there's a part of me that wonders, does this thing need to crash and burn so they learn their lesson? Like, does Jeffrey Lurie have to hit rock bottom for him to maybe realize, or is he just too far gone at this point?
Yeah, I don't think that's going to help. He seems to be set in his ways to the point where he's almost expecting them to fail for the next couple of years. But if they turn around and they win, like say in the next 3-4 years, then he's going to say, I told you so. I knew what I was doing all along. I think the best thing they can do is I don't believe in this rebuilding stuff in the NFL. I think you can turn it around relatively quickly. I don't think the Eagles need to go 3-13 or 2-14 or 2-15 now with 17 games. I just think you can get back into contention relatively fast, and I'm just I'm hoping, or I'm sure Eagles fans are hoping that Jeffrey will realize that, and just like I said, sit back, sit in your luxury box, enjoy the games, offer some insights if you want. If you want to meet with the coaches every week, go ahead, but just sit back and let the football people run the football team, and I think that he'll be relatively pleased with the results, and that would be my suggestion for him.
Speaking of results, we saw over the weekend someone get some pretty incredible results at the Masters. Hideki Matsuyama.
Oh, yeah.
The way he handled those final 2 days of the tournament while other golfers were flailing around him was incredible. And I understand that it maybe lost a little juice because there wasn't as much direct competition on Sunday. But to me, one of the things that makes an individual sport like golf or tennis great is that when you see someone have success and they do it in a way that's impressive, to me, that in and of itself is great. And I thought to see him, the way he reacted, the fact that he has a history with the Masters, I just feel like there's so much storyline that just made the Masters Sunday that much more enjoyable than maybe if it was, no offense to like Jordan Spieth, but it's like you're not getting that kind of storyline if Spieth wins it.
Yeah, everybody was. I heard some, well, not everybody, but I heard some people complaining on social media about how boring it was because Tiger Woods wasn't involved. Well, not to me. I mean, what Matsuyama did, especially on Saturday on the back nine, he essentially took the control of the tournament there. I know people were a little, I don't know, say disappointed, but surprised that he kind of slipped a little bit on Sunday. But he did what he had to do. I mean, he made the shots that he had to make. He scored the way he needed to score. He knew he had a little bit of a cushion there, so he didn't have to take any unnecessary chances. Granted, he made some mistakes, but I thought he did an excellent job of handling the pressure, especially. I mean, I don't know if people realize the amount of scrutiny and pressure that he undergoes, and being a Japanese golfer. I mean, the media is just they're all about him. I mean, there's dozens, if not hundreds, of people following him and reporting on his every move. I think it was a little bit less this year because of the limited media availability, but still, he knew that an entire nation was following him, and for him to perform under that kind of pressure was really impressive.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me like Yao Ming, when he came to the NBA,
Sure.
that kind of like insanity where it's like everywhere he went, everything he did. And people don't know, maybe don't know this, don't realize, 'cause I was hearing about this over the weekend. Golf is actually apparently really big over there
Yeah,
in Japan. So like this
very
is
much
not
so.
this isn't some anomaly here, okay? This is a guy who the country and him and everybody involved is invested in his success. And listen, I almost fell out of my seat when I heard Andy Norris say that, the potential, this is not just, life changing in terms of his profession, but there's a chance that Matsuyama could make up to $1 billion for the rest of his life in terms of endorsements just because he won the Masters. So, I mean, this wasn't just him winning his historic tournament. This is literally life changing.
Oh yeah, I mean he's an icon in Japan now. It's kind of like I guess a close analogy might be Manny Pacquiao in the Philippines. Just the fact that he was so popular, actually now is in their government, and I don't know if it's Congress or what have you, but yeah, it's just amazing the opportunities that are now going to open up for him, and they're well deserved too. I mean, he's been so close. He's been on the cusp for a number of years now. Everybody knows he was the top amateur at the Masters, I guess, 10 years ago. So for him to continue to plug along, continue to hone his craft, and it paid off for him this weekend. It was really neat to see.
Dave Weinberg joining us for a Weinberg Wednesday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at Dave Weinberg 19 on Twitter. Speaking of people who are having a good time right now, Dave, I never thought in my life I would ever say that Mike Trout is playing better than I've ever seen him until the last few weeks. I think this might be the best I've ever seen Mike Trout play. It's not just because of the power, but he's leading the league in walks with 11. His slugging percentage is ridiculous. It's over like 700 on base, over 50% of the time. I mean, we might literally be seeing the best player in baseball playing the best he ever has at age 29. And I never thought I would say that because I felt like we've already seen what he could do. And now it's like, oh, wait a minute, I got another level to this thing.
Yeah, I mean, I get a little bit of a shock. A lot of people who kind of thought maybe he wasn't the best anymore. That there were some younger guys getting ready to take over that mantle, but he's gone out and shown already in this season that he has no equal when it comes to baseball. He is the best in the game. He's one of the best to ever play. And you're right. I mean, to see him take that to another level is it's just mind-boggling. Just when you think that he's at his best, he's better, and it's really cool, and especially the fact that it's a local kid. Everybody's invested around the area in him, and it has a little special soft spot in their heart for him, I think. And it's just ridiculous the things that he's accomplishing right now.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of, for me at least, I remember years ago when Griffey had that 97 season, when he hit 56 home runs, had almost 150 RBIs. It was like, at that point, I think he had just turned 27 that year. And we all thought, hey, we know what Griffey is, right? And then he takes his game to a whole nother level. And you're just like, whoa, like, all right, you had more in the bag. And it feels like it's a similar thing with Mike, where it's like, it's almost like we have to just take away the expectation at this point and just say, you know what, this guy's the best player in the game, and just roll with it and just enjoy the show, because realistically, the only thing he's not doing is pitching. And realistically, if he wanted to do that, he probably could, because if Ohtani can do it, I'm sure Mike could do it if he wanted to.
Yeah, he was actually a pretty good pitcher in high school, but not to the level that he is as an outfielder and slugger here. But yeah, I mean, it's just incredible to see, and I'm really hoping that just for his sake, that the Angels are able to make the playoffs and to maybe have some postseason success. I mean, because he's waited for so long, and the knock has always been that you're great, but you haven't done much in the postseason. And I would really love to see the Angels have a good year. They're off to a very good start, so hopefully they'll be able to keep it up.
Dave Weinberg joining us here for a Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN at Weinberg19 on Twitter. Also, the podcast is Tequila and Touchdowns with Dave Weinberg. Dave, one more before I let you go.
Sure.
I noticed a few days ago that you mentioned on Twitter about how, because you're a boxing guy, you covered the sport for a very long time, and you mentioned that you're getting tired of seeing all these fights that are happening everywhere but Atlantic City. And I recorded an interview. I'm going to air it on Friday with the PFL CEO of PFL MMA. And one of the things he told me, and people could hear it for themselves on Friday, is that he said, part of the reason why they're coming back to Atlantic City is because of the amenities. It's because of the history in the city. It's because of the fact that they can go to Ocean and they can literally have a bubble environment. They're gonna have nobody else in the building but the fighters and the crew. They're not even gonna have fans there. And they said it was because Atlantic City was able to offer them things that other cities couldn't. I'm sitting here thinking, I'm listening to this as I'm recording it with him. I'm thinking, wait a minute. So the MMA guy gets this, but boxing doesn't think they can have fights in Atlantic City. It's just such a strange difference there, where you have one side of the fight game saying we are coming to Atlantic City because they can offer us what we can't get anywhere else. But then the other side of the fight game, boxing is like, thanks, but no thanks, it seems like.
Yeah, I think maybe part of the problem is that the PFL have some sort of history with Atlantic City. They've had their season here, 2 of the last 3 years. So they know they have a very good relationship with Ocean and vice versa. So they were able to make things work. Some of these other boxing promoters and organizations, they've since I don't want to say abandoned Atlantic City, but they're used to putting like the Top Ranks and the zones and the PBC. They're used to putting on shows and promoting fights in other areas. So I guess those were the first locations that they went to. But I mean, I was watching Jerron Boots Ennis. I don't know if you know who he is, but he might be the best of these. He's the next wave of the great Philly fighters. And watching him on Showtime on Saturday night, I just kept thinking, man, this belongs in Atlantic City. The kid's fought here like 5, 6, 7 times. If he ever gets a title shot, which he should in the next fight or two, I'm really hoping that someone, I don't care if it's Hard Rock or Boardwalk Hall or Ocean or even, I don't know, Claridge or Showboat, anybody, they have to get together and bring boxing back. It's such an important part of the fabric of Atlantic City, and I'm just really sick of having to watch these guys fight elsewhere.
Follow me on Twitter at Dave Weinberg 19 for all of that and more about the Eagles, baseball, boxing, golf. Dave's got you covered on all fronts. And again, the podcast, as I mentioned, is Tequila and Touchdowns with Dave Weinberg. And as all guests, he appeared on the Boardwalk kind of hotline and live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter in virtual color. Dave, good to see you. Appreciate you jumping on. We'll catch you next week.
Thanks, Josh. I really appreciate it. Talk to you next week.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. And of course, Game Night being brought to my friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. We mentioned baseball. Listen, there's nothing like watching baseball with great weather, a cold drink, and a little action with FanDuel Sportsbook. And right now, new users can swing for the fences risk-free, get up to $1,000 back if your first bet doesn't win. But the only way you can get that risk-free bet is if you sign up with my promo code Hennig with FanDuel Sportsbook. And if you're still an existing user of FanDuel Sportsbook, you can get the $25 back every day if your same game parlay falls one leg short. This way, you can combine multiple bets into an even bigger win all season long. Whether it's baseball, basketball, whatever the sport is, you can get multiple bets in the one parlay. And if your parlay falls one leg short, $25 back with same game parlay insurance. One of many reasons FanDuel Sportsbook is America's #1 sportsbook. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app, sign with my promo code Hennig, or go to sportsbook.fanduel.com and get your first bet risk-free. For new users, that's promo code Hennig with FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 or to play and present NJRPA. First real online money wager only for risk-free bet. Refund issue is non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Restrictions apply. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Sixers back in action tonight. We will transition back to the hardwood. I gave you my thoughts on the game tonight earlier. We will get into them coming up next with Kevin McCormick, our Sixers writer for 97.3 ESPN.com, right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. And we'll get to your thoughts and comments before the show is up. 609-403-0973 is the text board, and you can comment on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We get to all your comments before the end of the show right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN.
It's Sixers basketball tonight on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
Joel has it again. Between the legs, backs up, shot in the air. It's good. Oh, man. That guy's 7 feet tall.
The Sixers host the Brooklyn Nets tonight. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Philadelphia 76ers basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN.
Swing in to Matt Blatt Kia and put 0 down. A hit with 0% APR financing. That's deep for 75 months. A home run. Don't get fooled by a bad pitch. Matt Blatt Kia in Toms River and Egg Harbor Township needs your trade, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. So get out of that old car you hate and get the credit you deserve with 0 down payment and 0% APR financing available for up to 75 months on every new 2021 Kia Sportage in stock, or get a $2,500 consumer rebate only at Matt Blatt Kia. We want to get you approved today, and you can't make a mistake with our 4-day love it or leave it return policy. Come in today or visit us online because
It's gotta be a Matt Blatt Kia.
offers with approved Tier 1 or 2 credit through PM Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on $13.33 per 1,000 borrowed. Negative equity refinance into new loan. Go to mattblattkianj.com for complete details. Expires 5/5/2021. Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, and now on Route 37 in Toms River.
When it comes to wings in the Delaware Valley, nobody beats the Piccalilli Inn. Enjoy ice-cold beer and their world-famous wings, tails, or ears on the Pick patio. Try new flavors like garlic parmesan, Jim Beam maple, or smoker. You'll see why people drive from all over for the Picks, world-famous wings and home-style favorites. Whether you're headed to or from the shore, for eat-in or take-out, make tonight the night. You visit the one, the only, the original Piccalilli Inn, Route 206, Chemung, New Jersey. For live music and specials, like them on Facebook.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. As I promised, we'll get to the Sixers talk here in just a bit. Joining us right now on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline, we have Sixers and Nets at the top of the hour. Before we get there, we will preview the game coming up right now with Kevin McCormick, our Sixers beat writer for 97.3 ESPN.com. And of course, our Sixers conversation is being brought to you by Trifecta Therapeutics over there in Glassboro, South Jersey's premier sports and rehabilitation physical therapy center, treating the pros and the Joes. Visit them online at trifectatherapeutics.com. Kevin, how you doing today?
Josh, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Well, I think you're currently doing better than me, because as soon as you answer the next question, I am going to mute my microphone and then untangle my headphone cable from under my chair under here. So a little bit about behind the curtain, I somehow rolled up the cable, which is over to my right. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, I purposely have it going around. You can see me picking up the cable here around the headphone set, but apparently I gave it too much slack, and now it's under my chair. So to get this conversation started, my question to you, and hopefully you will use more than 30 seconds to answer the question, is on a scale of 1 to 5, how disgusted are you the Nets decided to not actually play tonight? Because according to Steve Nash, they could have played directly, but they chose to play him last night for reasons that, as I mentioned earlier in the show, are completely bogus to me.
I don't know if I could put a number on it. I would say I lean towards both sides of the fence, because I agree. Steve Nash even said it during his pregame availability that they tossed around the idea of playing Kevin Durant tonight as opposed to yesterday in Minnesota, with their game being rescheduled and such. But obviously they opted not to. I could see it being taken as a slap in the face. The rest of the guys, I mean, LaMarcus Aldridge is out with a non-COVID related illness. Blake Griffin, who's had injury history in the past, so you could see why he could be a load managed. And then James Harden's been hurt for weeks, so you can't really hold him accountable either. But I do agree. I think them opting to play Durant, no disrespect to Minnesota, but when you have a back-to-back with the Minnesota Timberwolves and a nationally televised game against the Sixers with first place in the conference hanging in the balance, it's pretty clear which game Durant should be playing in. I think the people at ESPN are more upset about this and the nationally televised market than the Sixers themselves. But I think it's just apparent that they think the number one seed in the Eastern Conference just isn't really that important to them.
It's really not. And listen, I know Mike Gill mentioned earlier in the day that there's a long history of number one seeds not making it and not winning the NBA Finals in the last few years from the Eastern Conference. But part of the problem is that history involves LeBron James. So, for the Hawks and for the Bucks and for the Raptors and for, Indiana one year was the one seed. If you don't have that guy, LeBron James, in the Eastern Conference, maybe all those teams go to the NBA Finals. So I think that history of the number one seed is a little bit jaded. And realistically, I understand Durant is phenomenal. Kyrie is talented. James Harden's an MVP winner, but they ain't LeBron James. And this idea that they could just hit a switch, go into the playoffs, and be great, I just don't see it. And Kevin, I gotta go. Kevin Pelton was on with Mike Gill earlier today, and he said he's taking the field over the Nets, and I gotta agree with him, because I think the Nets are going to end up like the Clippers. They're going to be that team that all these expectations, and they're going to run into a roadblock. And guess what happens? If you're the 2 seed, you might be playing the second round. You might be playing the Bucks. And if I'm the Nets, or you might be playing the Heat for that matter, either one of those teams could give the Nets some problems, because both of them play defense.
Or in the worst case scenario, they just completely wear them down. But it's funny that you mentioned LeBron James, and you're completely right in the sense of LeBron James was never the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, but when playoffs rolls around, he might as well have been the 1 seed just because he is one of the few players who can turn that switch on. And looking in history, we've seen super teams have had struggles putting it together in their first year. Look no further than LeBron James himself in that first year in Miami when he joined up with Dwayne Wade, with Chris Bosh, who were both, elite level talents at the time as well. You might not say the same for Bosh, but Dwayne Wade was, an alpha of another team of a similar nature of how the Nets trio has come about. So even they had trouble flipping the switch and getting it done that first season and ended up paying for it, falling to the Dallas Mavericks in the NBA Finals. So I do think it's very interesting that they think that they can just magically put it together without really playing much in the regular season. I saw somewhere yesterday, I think they've only played about 190 minutes together this season on the floor. And granted, they're all phenomenal in their own ways, but you need that cohesiveness and that togetherness. That's the kind of thing that pulls a team to make a title run. And when you're looking at, tangibles like that, you could see why you could take a team like Milwaukee, whose core has been together for the most part, or the Sixers, who, their top three has been together for a while now. So I do agree. It's interesting, and they really are playing a tricky dance, not trying to figure this out in the regular season.
Again, Sixers taking on the Nets tonight at 7 o'clock here on 97.3 ESPN. Because of the Nets fiasco, they are starting their 29th different starting lineup tonight against the Sixers. Dwight Howard will not play tonight due to knee soreness, which, all right, doesn't help my fantasy basketball team very much. And but DeAndre Jordan will have the dubious distinction of trying to guard Joel Embiid, which I hope means Joel Embiid goes for 40 and 20 tonight. Just a personal preference. Kevin, when you think about this game also tonight, I think people don't also realize that the NBA expects to have more fans in the seats for the postseason. A lot of these states are planning to have more opening of restrictions as we get closer to May and June. So that home court advantage for the Sixers, if they have the number 1 seed, could actually be bigger than we realize right now on April 14th, because even though there's only a couple thousand people there right now, you might have almost double that number if we get to June and people just start getting the vaccine and opening up like they expect to.
Not to mention, even if that doesn't happen, even in a limited capacity, as someone who's had the luxury to be able to go in there and be in that situation, even with the limited capacity crowd, it does sound like a packed stadium at nights when that team gets rolling. And I wouldn't, it's tough to say for other teams, but for the Sixers in general, just looking at them, I would say the home court advantage is extremely important. If you look at the past 2 years as a sample size, whether there's been no fans or a packed house, the Sixers have been the best home team in the East and one of the best home teams in the NBA. So if they're them, you think from that perspective, it's definitely something that they're keeping in the back of their minds that they want to have in their back pocket come the postseason. Because when you look in the past, they had some very dominant performances. And looking back to that Toronto series, who knows how that Game 7 goes if it's played in Philadelphia as opposed to Toronto. So there's a lot hanging in the balance here, and this could end up being a costly move for Brooklyn if they do meet down the road and they have to play the Sixers in a potential Game 7 in Philadelphia as opposed to being able to play on their home court in Brooklyn.
He's Kevin McCormick. You follow him on Twitter at KevinMCCNBA on Twitter for all of the Sixers and NBA coverage. Kevin, speaking of the NBA, a little bit bigger news story that just came out a little bit ago, and I haven't had a chance to dive too deeply into this. This kind of follows up on the news that came up earlier, and I'm a little conflicted on this. An NBA story came out that apparently NBA GMs and team health officials fear that the compressed schedule this year is leading to a rash of injuries and player health reaching a boiling point. My problem with that story, Kevin, is that the last time I checked, didn't the players sign off of this, and didn't the league tell us that this was not going to be a problem? And now all of a sudden they're saying it is a problem. It kind of feels like it's an excuse right now. Steve Nash said earlier, we're not making excuses. And now all of a sudden the rest of the league is saying, I got an excuse for you.
I mean, there's no denying that injuries this year have been taking a major toll league wide. If you're looking at LeBron James, look at the MVP race in general. It feels like the MVP this year might be one on default just of, being a survivor award this year with how many guys have gone down. And now it's taking a toll on contenders if you're looking at Denver with Jamal Murray, who recently tore his ACL. So I could agree. I mean, everyone did sign on to this. I think it's more just they wanted to get a season in and they wanted to do their best to it. Obviously, you can't predict the future and the kind of toll it will take, but this condensed schedule, obviously, even looking from a Sixers perspective, Tobias Harris has missed some time. Same with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid as well. This playing every other day, and when teams aren't playing, they're traveling. It, without a doubt, has taken a toll both physically and mentally on these players.
Yeah, according to the Elias Sportsboro, 15% of the All-Stars this season have missed games. It's on pace to be the second highest rate in NBA history. The only season saw a higher rate was the 2014-2015 season, where it was 17%. So read into that what you will. I don't know. I kind of feel like, and this is just my opinion, I'm not saying I'm right, but maybe I sound like a get off my lawn guy, but to me, Kevin, there's a part of me that says you're an athlete. Your job is to be in shape. Your job is to take care of yourself. Injuries are going to happen no matter what. You can't prevent everything. And at some point, it's you either can or you can't play. And, when Gordon Hayward snapped his leg a couple of years ago, which we all saw on national TV, did the schedule impact that? Like, I feel like blaming the schedule on injuries is kind of a cop-out, because it's almost like the NBA is trying to excuse the fact that a team like the Nets is using this injury management thing, and the Clippers last year, the injury management, as much as they can to maybe excuse certain things, where the problem is that maybe these athletes today are not as well conditioned as we would like or hope they would be, because ultimately I remember back in the 90s when everybody played 82 games and almost nobody was getting injured like they are today.
I could agree to some of that. Do you think that some of the advances in physical training and medicine and such have played a role as well? I do agree that the whole load management thing definitely is an issue, but it's really only an issue within the top teams. When you see stuff like that that's talked about, like you said, with the Clippers last year with Kawhi and Paul George. And from the team perspective, you have to look at it, these guys are, they're assets. When you have a franchise cornerstone, a guy who can change the trajectory of your franchise for the next decade plus, obviously you're going to be extremely careful with them. And when you're a team like the Brooklyn Nets, like the Sixers, like the Lakers, or the Clippers of last season, you're not just playing for the regular season. You're playing to play deep into June or July of last year. I believe the finals will go pretty deep this year too. So it's a tough way to balance. I think it's just the regular season might have lost its luster in today's NBA, where it might not have back in the day.
Follow him on Twitter at KevinMCCNBA for your Sixers and NBA coverage. His work is over at 97.3 ESPN.com. As all guests, appear on the Boardwalk kind of hotline. Sixers versus Nets tonight at 7 p.m. on 97.3 ESPN FM. Kevin, enjoy the game tonight. Hopefully Embiid goes nuts and the Nets have to answer some uncomfortable questions after the game.
Thanks, Josh. You take care.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. As promised, gets a couple of your thoughts before we get out of here at 609-403-0973. But first, a question came in on the YouTube feed. Joe Show comes in watching on YouTube. Says, Josh, I think the Eagles should pursue free agents KJ Wright or Malik Hooker. I don't have interest in KJ Wright. I feel like that's kind of a ship that sailed. I feel like KJ Wright is a washed up player of what his potential is supposed to be at this point. Malik Hooker interests me because he's still young. He played with Jonathan Gannon over there in Indianapolis and with Nick Sirianni. I know he's coming off a couple injuries in the last few years, but you could probably get him for very cheap. He's got incredible upside. When he came out of the draft, he was considered to be one of the best safety prospects of the last several years. And injuries have kind of derailed that. So to me, I would be very interested in Malik Hooker. Dan and EHT chimes in on the text board at 609-403-0973. Dan says Jeffrey Lurie's been a great owner for many years with more ups than downs. I sure trust his hire of Sirianni and believe the future is bright for the Eagles. I hope you're right. I'm getting uncomfortable with all these news reports about Jeffrey Lurie being as involved as he is. I feel like there's a level of his involvement that's going to, be self-destructive at some point. But I do think Sirianni was a good hire. I do agree with you there, Dan. Thanks to Dave Weinberg. Thanks to Kevin McCormick for joining us here on Game Night. I'm Josh Hennig. I'll catch you tomorrow. Sixers, Nets, next on 97.3 ESPN.
It's your chance to win Sports Bash Cash up to $10,000. Enter the code words every day at 973ESPN.com or with the free mobile app. The more codes you enter, the more chances you have to win up to $10,000. Here's the Sports Bash Cash code word.
String, STRING. String. Enter it now on our website, 973ESPN.com, or use the free mobile app. Sports Bash Cash is brought to you by Jersey Shore Federal Credit Union for all your lending needs. Get the next Sports Bash Cash code word tomorrow morning at 9:55.
It's Sports Bash Cash 10 times a day, every weekday at 55 after each hour from 9:55 a.m. to 6:55 p.m. Listen all day for your chance to win Sports Bash Cash up to $10,000.